Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Great Cyber Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about insider threat. Now, insider threat presents a very complex and dynamic risk that impacts all facets of the critical infrastructure. Now, defining those threats, they're a critical step to understanding and establishing mitigations. Now, what are insider threats? Now, insider threats are employees. They could have badge access, computer access. They are familiar with how your organization develops products and services, and they have knowledge of the strategic workflow. Now, we can think about this in three broad categories. They're the threat types, threat activities, and of course, the mitigation controls and the goals. Now, let's talk about the threat types. Now, there's the unintentional threat. That's the careless user. Now, this happens when there's an accidental exposure of sensitive or proprietary information. That can be seen and illustrated in the loss of storage devices, the USB, the thumb drives, the loss in stolen computers or laptops, and even clicking malicious links. So this is the unintentional threat, the careless user. Now we'll transition to the intentional threat. This is a malicious actor, and this results in intentional sabotage, data theft for personal reasons, and financial gain. Very intentional actions here. Now, some examples of this can be seen in the recent threat intel reports that we've talked about. DPRK and the fake IT workers. This is an example, again, of a malicious insider, and the controls are important. Now, when we think about this technical evolution that we're undergoing with AI, there's another category of threats, and I'll call that the agentic identity and the agentic workflow. We could host an entire masterclass and podcast just on this topic alone. Think about it. With increase in automation and complexity, we have chatbots, AI assistants, coding agents, and the autonomous workflow. Now, they can, unintentionally, this would be part of that unintentional threat, have access and expose sensitive data that is unintended. Some additional use cases we may see in the agentic workflow is intent and driven provisioning, workload optimization, drift remediation, and of course, adaptive governance. This is about real-time risk mitigation. Another category is also part of that consideration are third-party threats. These are the contractors and vendors who are not formal members of your organization, but yet they have accesses that we've talked about. Now, when it comes to the threat activities and the associated impact, fraud, intellectual property theft, and system and resource sabotage. Now, fraud is the financial theft. Intellectual property theft are the trade secrets, the customer list, the data, that confidential strategic information that's so critical for your organization. And that was seen in the intentional threats associated with DPRK and the fake IT workers. And of course, ransomware, malware, and account lockouts, data deletion. So those are the threat activities. Now, when it comes to the mitigation goals, our goals are ultimately to deter individuals from wanting to do this in the first place. Seems obvious, but it takes intentional action. We want to be able to detect the activity through improved visibility and observability, and of course, disrupt the efforts. So again, to recap, 3 threat types: the unintentional threat, this careless user, where we may see loss of computers or devices, clicking the malicious link, and even sending emails to unintended recipients. The second category is the intentional threat actor, where someone may be disgruntled, or we even see nation-state cybercriminal activity, such as DPRK and the fake IT workers. The threat activities include fraud, intellectual property theft, and system sabotage. That may be the loss of trade secrets, customer data, that strategic information that's so critical for your organization. And of course, ransomware, malware, data deletion. That's part of the malicious goal. Now, how do we fix this? We have security controls. We always talk about the importance of defense in depth, and that may manifest itself in data loss prevention tools and controls, endpoint platform protection, the ever important identity and access management, user and entity behavior analytics, and of course, multi-factor authentication. We can also address this by implementing the important policy and procedures throughout your organization. Now, when it comes to policies and procedures, we're really talking about user behavior. This is about the use of personal devices and accounts for work. You want to make sure that your organization has a firm stance on that. The use of work devices and accounts for personal matters. You want to really avoid this at all costs. And the transfer of sensitive work information between personal and work accounts. And one way to address this is to start with the policies and procedures within your organization. Now, when we talk about, AI and agentic workflow, this is really important. The use of work devices and those corporate accounts for personal matters can't be tolerated. It's really unprecedented. And you will see these unpredictable spikes that'll drain your compute budget. So when we think about the associated indicators, we're thinking about data that may be sent via third-party devices. Dropbox and OneDrive and Google Drive. You want to make sure you have controls in place like data loss prevention programs, identity access management to manage this. You want to make sure that you have appropriate processes and procedures around your local storage devices and the exclusion and prevention of the external storage. And you want to make sure that you have proper procedures in place regarding email and email attachment. You can unintentionally send client data to individuals that are unintended recipients. So data loss prevention programs and some of those platforms are great controls to have in place. And again, you can address this on the front side with policy and procedure. We'll follow that up with the appropriate security training, awareness training. Having vendor management controls are so important. And of course, log monitoring. This is the application, the enforcement of these policies and procedures through controls. Also, when we're thinking about insider threat and the malicious actor, we want to look at the employees that may have submitted their resignation, employees that have received disciplinary actions or improvement performance notifications. These individuals can pose a risk as well. So again, we want to think about these very ongoing and emerging threats cohesively. We want to take a defense in depth approach to mitigating. So in closing, proactively making insider threat programs effective can stop the trajectory and change the course of the events from a harmful outcome to an effective mitigation. Thank you once again for joining our podcast and joining this fascinating topic on insider threats. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.